Welcome, everybody. We're going to get started. Oh.
I'm going to leave it open because I'm going to help with the...
Okay. If you could take your seats, we'll get started. Welcome to the Friday panel series of the International Writing Program's Fall Residency. For those of you who are new to our programming, we've given our writers a topic to consider and present to you today. Copies of these précis will be available next week on our website at iwp.uiowa.edu, where you can also find biographies and writing samples from our writers and a schedule of our upcoming events. You can also find this information by scanning the QR code on the bookmarks available at the back of the room. And before I introduce the panel, I want to just say a couple of words. We've come to the end of the Fall Residency. This is our last formal panel. We'll have one final one next week at Merge, where the writers will be invited to speak off the cuff about their images of America, what they have taken from their time here. And if they look a little bushy-tailed today, it's because we can thank United Airlines for delivering us home about 4 hours late, early this morning. And we are, and since the same thing happened on the way out, thank you, United. Yeah. And now for today's panel. Writing love in the age of irony. Love, arguably the most powerful human emotion, is a perennial challenge to the rational grip of narrative. Add to it the extra tripwire of irony as seen in the ubiquity of rom-coms on everyone's screens. Is it possible to give true love, rather than true love, its due in words, in every literary culture? What literary work has succeeded in making you truly feel that emotion? The writers to my left are Wong Yi Eva is a Hong Kong writer, librettist, and editor for the literary journal Fleur de Lettres. She's the author of 4 short story collections, most recently Ways to Love in a Crowded City and The 4 Seasons of Lam Yip, as well as the Cantonese-language libretto for the chamber opera, Women Like Us, and an original text for the multimedia concert, The Happy Family. Among other works, selected stories and essays have been translated into English by Jennifer Feely and published as Lam Yip's Neighborhood. She's been a columnist for newspapers and magazines such as Ming Pao Weekly, Line Paper, Hong Kong Pupil Literary Monthly Magazine, etc. In 2018, she was the Hong Kong Arts Development Award for Young Artist for Literary Arts. And in 2020, she was named one of the 20 most anticipated young Sinophone novelists by the Taiwanese literary magazine Unitas. She currently teaches creative writing and hosts a reading radio program called Book Review, and her participation in the Fall Residency was made possible by the Robert H.N. Ho Family Foundation Global. Seated next to her is Marciela Guerrero, a poet and writer from Mexico City. She's the author of 9 poetry collections, most recently Rio Revuelto. She studied Hispanic language and literature at the National Autonomous University of Mexico and later earned a master's degree in Latin American literature at the same institution. In 2015, along with Hilatio Rodriguez and Paola Abramo, she organized the performance project #Ropa Sucia, which worked to expose the invisibility of women's work in all professional fields, particularly as writers and creators. Her recent novel was a finalist for the Dharma Kasiwabi Award, and her work has been translated into Swedish, French, English, and German, among other languages. And she's been a fellow of Mexico's Distinguished National System of Art Creators since 2018. Her participation was made possible by the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs at the U.S. Department of State. Our next writer is not Rita, who will be reading for Orit Gedali, and Orit will be joining us through the wonders of Zoom and or YouTube. Orit, she'll be joining us from Israel. She's an Israeli poet, picture book writer, editor, and the co-founder of Sadnaot Habayat, a school for creative writing in Israel that she has co-directed for 2 decades. She has published 4 books of poetry, most recently The Towers, the English translation of her 2003 collection, 20 Girls to Envy Me, which was translated by Marcella Sulak, was longlisted for the 2017 PEN American Literary Award, and her picture book, Kind of a Unicorn, received the 2022 Dvorah Omer Award. Her latest picture book, Ready, Ready, was published in September. Her poems have appeared in such publications as Haaretz Literary Supplement, Yedio Literary Supplement, and Granta Israel, and her books have been translated into 12 languages. Fulbright Israel sponsored her participation in the residency. And last but not least is Noelle Q. de Jesus. Born in Connecticut, she raised in the Philippines and a resident of Singapore since 2000. Noelle is a writer, copywriter, magazine editor, translator, and the author of 2 short fiction collections, Cursed and Other Stories, and Blood Collected Stories. Among other magazine and copy editing work, she helped establish Cosmopolitan Philippines and has served as a deputy editor for Elle Singapore. She also started the Filipino flash fiction anthology series Fast Food Fiction, Short Stories to Go, and co-edited Missed Connections, microfiction from Asia, which is forthcoming. Her work has appeared in Puerto del Sol, Witness, Mad Season Review, and New Limestone Review, among others, and was recently anthologized in The Art and Craft of Asian Stories, a writer's guide and anthology. She has an MFA in fiction from Bowling Green State University and describes herself as a married empty nester with 2 adult children. Her participation is funded by the National Arts Council Singapore. And I want to say a special thank you to the Iowa City Public Library, which has hosted this for so many years here, and on very short notice figured out how to get Orit to join us from a distance. And another thank you to Russ Ganem, Dean of International Programs, who made possible the pizza in the back. Eva?
Hi, thank you. Hi, I'm Wong Yi. There is a great tradition of love stories in Hong Kong literature. You may have heard of Eiling Zhang Eiling's famous novella, King Sing Ji Lun, Love in a Fallen City, a story about how it took the fall of Hong Kong after the Japanese invasion in order for the lovers to become aware of their true feelings for each other. Another famous example is the short story 像我這樣的一個女子, A Girl Like Me by Sai Sai Shishi, in which a mortician is afraid of telling her boyfriend the truth about what she does for a living because she's afraid that his love for her will die immediately if he knows that the faces she puts makeup on are no longer alive. In the heyday of the newspaper column, many talented Hong Kong writers such as Yik Su filled the pages every day with fictional romance narratives to entertain the readers of the pre-internet era. My latest short stories collection, entitled Ways to Love in a Crowded City, 擠迫之城的戀愛方法, also ran as a newspaper column for 2 years. Although the title of the book may sound like I'm trying to teach readers every single way to win over a lover's heart, I'm in no way interested in writing a self-help book. Instead, I wanted to use my short stories to demonstrate the various possible emotions and behaviors related to romantic love, including those of people feeling indifferent to or even repulsed by romantic love, and the ways in which romantic love is expressed by those living within the unique constraints of a crowded and busy city like Hong Kong. I get it. Portrayals of love can feel so shallow and cheap sometimes, especially when used in advertisements as a shortcut to suggest that if you use this product, you will live happily ever after, or in cookie-cutter rom-coms, or in popular fiction, often considered lowbrow. I began publishing short stories as a newspaper columnist 15 years ago, In Ways to Love in a Crowded City was the first time I placed romantic love at the forefront of my work. As a columnist, I'm used to producing one short story every week, and doing that for months and years on end requires the consistent generation of new and functional ideas for writing, which would be a huge challenge for everyone. Over the years, I have noticed that love is a marvelous tool for the fiction writer in a hurry. It can instantly bring conflict and motivation to any story, explain away any ridiculous behaviors and choices on the parts of the characters, and add momentum to a story that doesn't want to go anywhere, but needs to get out to your editor in a few hours. Sprinkling romance into your half-baked story to make it interesting is so easy, like adding chicken bouillon to a pot of soup to save yourself hours of brewing your own stock on the scorching hot stove. And it is precisely this dangerous convenience that motivated me to work as hard as I can and to go as deeply as I can into certain issues that can only be revealed through stories about love, such as the Hong Kong culture of long working hours and working overtime at the office leading to insecurity in the heart of the lover, couples making out in IKEA instead of at home because their rent is too high, lesbian couples contemplating emigration to Taiwan because in Hong Kong, gay marriage remains illegal. Albert Camus wrote in The Plague, "Perhaps the easiest way of making a town's acquaintance is to ascertain how people in it work, how they love, and how they die." My stories use love as a way to play with techniques in fiction writing and as a way to unravel the unique conditions of life in the city I call home. Love is a very powerful, basic human need, containing great power to help humans survive through impossibly painful times. Case in point, 3 months into the initial pandemic lockdown, all of my close friends told me that their exes were coming out of the woodworks and asking to reunite. I spent so many hours telling them not to do anything stupid out of loneliness. But I get it. Love offers comfort and distraction, especially in times of chaos and great distress. It is a safe haven. Love stories do exactly the same thing. The pandemic hit during the run of my column, Ways to Love in a Crowded City. So I wrote about lovers arguing over whether the boyfriend should or should not go see his passionate ex-girlfriend who had promised to give him surgical masks. Those were in citywide shortage at the time. I wrote about another boyfriend being adorably jealous because his girlfriend's entire office got to see inside her bedroom when she was forced to make Zoom calls while working from home. Her typical tiny Hong Kong apartment without a separate room to be used as an office. For that matter, not even a wall that looked remotely professional. I wrote about a girl in a 14-day self-quarantine, finding peace in her suffering, knowing that her self-imprisonment protected her lover living in the same city from the risk of being infected if she turned out to be patient zero in the community after all. 你喜歡他，很喜歡他，喜歡得願意忍耐着不去見他，只要他安好。那麼就繼續忍耐下去吧，等隔離期結束，等疫情過去，等他回復。你從他送來的物資裏取出2片紫菜，把它黏在上唇內側扮成2隻長牙，然後扮鬼臉自拍給他看。我是一隻海象，剛從澳洲游水回港，請多多指教，嘿嘿，你說。然後你獨自躺在酒店空虛的 king size 床裏，等他在自己家的單人床上醒來，笑着回應。So this is an excerpt from Patient, translated into English by Jennifer Feely. You like her. You really, really like her. You like her so much that you're willing to be patient and not see her, as long as she's safe and sound. And so, just keep on being patient. Wait for the quarantine period to pass by. Wait for the outbreak to subside. Wait for her to reply. You pluck 2 pieces of seaweed from the goodies she sent. Stick them inside your upper lip to form 2 tusks, then make a funny face and send her a selfie. I'm a walrus who just swam back to Hong Kong from Australia. It's a pleasure to make your acquaintance, hee, you say. Then you lie alone in the hotel's empty king-size bed, waiting for her to wake up on her own single bed at home, chuckling in response. Through these pandemic love stories, I tried to speak to the readers of the magazine in real time and let them know that they're not alone, that I'm also here with a story that brings gentleness and comfort. Love stories are one of the best forms of entertainment in times of peace, and a form of temporary escape and emotional outlet in times of turmoil. Love stories are also my way of demonstrating what living in Hong Kong was like during an exceptionally trying period of time. I guess in a way, there is nothing love and its stories cannot do. Thank you.
Do you want them a little bigger?
Yeah. And we'll scroll down. Yes, perfect. Thank you. Hi, everyone. I want to say thank you to Marina and my translator, Robin Myers, who helped me with this. Makochi piten sin, mano kosteka no pitelon sin, mano kosteka no sokoyotsin, makochi kochi pitelon sin. This is a lullaby in Mexicano, Nahuatl. And this is a poem for the most important writer in Mexico and Latin America, Sor Juana. I'm only going to read the first strophe. Amor empieza por desasosiego, solicitud, ardores y desvelo. Crece con riesgos, lances y recelos. Susténtase de llantos y de ruego. The lullaby you have just heard is in Nahuatl, one of the many indigenous languages of Avia Yala. Despite the countless attacks on its speakers, Nahuatl remains the majority indigenous language in Mexico, spoken today by 1.6 million of the country of 127 million inhabitants. It was also the language that my father's family abandoned when they left Santa Maria Tlaltihuitzia, Tlaxcala, and migrated to Mexico City in the late of 1930s. I like to imagine my ancestors being rocked to sleep, then rocking their own children to sleep with this melody. I like to imagine I want to imagine love moving through the history of those voices, traveling all the way down to me and my children as I raise them. The next poem, the sonnet by Sor Juana, was written in 17th century. There, the noun precisely defines the trance in falling in love. Ahead of her time, we read, Sor Juana would save us years of therapy and suffering caused by love and love sickness. But the sonnet originally written in my mother tongue and the song I learned to lull my children tell the stories and speak the language of love that shaped my conception of the world. On the one hand, a mythical language whose worldwide worldview makes me attentive to the fact that all living things are part of a body I share the world with. On the other, an imperial language in which, with a profound vocation for joy, I try to recover that worldview through poetry. This is why the stories, songs, and poems we place on our lips to win someone's love or hell or our broken hearts are essential in recovering the voices of communities and territories where nature is not a resource to be extracted, but bodies with whom we share the world, bodies of water, mountains, plants, trees, bacteria, brothers, sisters, fathers, mothers, wind, and earth. In this sense, the Zapatista uprising of 1994 emerged from a dignified rage in defense of the land and communities threatened by extractivist projects. At the same time as the first manifesto from Lacandon Jungle was released, the Zapatista women's revolutionary law began to circulate. Began to circulate. This document expressed women's demands for participation in public life, the right to have work and a fair salary, the right to marry or not, as well as the right to decide on how many children to have, contraceptive measures, health, and education, the same rights that Sor Juana had defended for herself and other women 3 centuries before. The work of Rosario Castellanos also echoes in the rights demanded by this law. In her novel, Balún Canán, Castellanos recounts the many forms of oppression that operate on women in Mexico, as well the many forms of dispossession that have operated for over 500 years on indigenous communities in Abya Yala. For her part, Sor Juana also wrote in Nahuatl and recovered the words of Afro-descendant communities in Mexico, attentive to the colonial oppression of these groups. In the recovery of this language and in the writing of environmental activists all over the world, we find stories of love that offer us not only forms to struggle against extractivism, but also an erotic ethics that illuminates the search for another possible world. I will close with the words of Soke poet Miquea Sanchez, whose deep love for the earth offers us courage and company in defending it. We can hear her voice.
Sabsiyao te tumin, sasachamba kiraguayo moram, te sudgu y muspaba da huyo, angumakuyao, nzotsuram, sabsiyao kowina ahkui, sasmayao huchere wopio te kiraguaitkui. Mina unasomo, mispiao mindangucham, yayas pavos te kasokyucham, te isan siramo te toya, te yakshkuitkui. Te tusku ispiomi, sonerambute, hisminatsame. Somos millones. Ven a mi tierra, instala tus máquinas, envenena los ríos que bebe el ganado, contamina los manantiales, llena de podredumbre el ojo de agua y el ojo de Dios. Engaña a mis hermanos, ofréceles el pan y la codicia, los placeres de la carne, el amor que se oferta al mejor postor. Soborna a mis hermanas, promételes poder y riqueza, háblales de las maravillas del primer mundo. Ven a mi tierra, instala tus máquinas aniquiladoras de ternura, muéstranos el dolor y la desesperanza, el impacto de las balas.
Somos millones y no te tenemos
miedo.
You can go ahead, we can hear you.
Okay. Hi. I would like to thank my friend, Rita Buchanan, for reading for me. I will be following this through the streaming. I can't wait for Chris to say what a dazzling set of presentations, and I hope that I will be able to participate in the Q&A session. Thank you so much.
Okay, happy to read on behalf of Orit. A famous story in the history of art forgery tells of an art collector who purchased a highly priced oil painting. In order to avoid paying tax on his newly bought masterpiece, the collector devised a plan. He would ask a local artist to paint over it and later ship it to an art restorer to peel away the camouflage and expose the original. It was a perfect plan. However, in 2 weeks' time, the art collector received a letter from the restorer who reported, "I have peeled away the first layer to expose the fake picture, and I kept peeling 3 more layers. How many more layers do you want me to continue peeling?" I thought of this story during the first week after I arrived at the international writing program. In an attempt to show up at my best, I peeled off the remains of a temporary tattoo I was wearing. I scrubbed my skin, these stickers stick hard, and pondered, what if I peel the temporary tattoo and then continue peeling the body? What is then exposed underneath? Is the body the finite layer, this masterpiece, noble in reason, infinite in faculty, etc.? Or is it just another layer in the game of illusions? I walk around the world with an abstract and well-repressed sense that what I consider to be real may be just a temporary facade. That some kind of transcendence is just around the corner to relieve me of my too strong belief in the truthfulness of the body, in this world of objects and matter, ready to reveal a something that lies underneath it. But how can I reach this mysterious underlying something? The transcendence, whose warm bass voice I crave to hear, has not spoken to me yet, and God knows I have waited, pun intended. Even science has failed to teach me what lies beyond the veil of cognition. Over 100 years ago, the mathematician David Hilbert published 23 unsolved problems. One of them challenged mathematics to find a complete set of axioms to describe the physical world, and another to find a complete set of axioms to describe the mathematical world. The first task is still to this day an unsolved mystery. The second, Gödel, proved impossible almost 100 years ago. So, no answers yet from science, and no divinity yet talking to me. With no better tool at hand to explore my persistent intuition, I turn to my own implicit bodily knowledge, and that's where love and writing about love comes in. In very few rare instances, when I happened to be in a state of intense love, something very strange happened. I had a physical experience of melting down. I wasn't confused by the multiplicity of the world. A deep sense of warmth flooded my body and turned matter into a unity of a single wave. Maybe this too is an illusion, a fabrication of my mind, but I do know that I had it, and that this experience, the bodily sensations defying the body, taught me that love, a wavelength of unity, is a categorically different experience of reality. It is of a different order. How can I tap into this wavelength and into it to return? Maybe I should use my poetry about love, my language, my verbal incantations to call upon it. Language in Hebrew is safah. It is the same word as border, edge. Hebrew teaches me that I can use my language in the most sublime and intense form to stand on the edge of perception and cross to the other side. I can use poems to defy fiction, not the fiction of the story, but the fiction of reality itself. Kabbalah Jewish mystics believe that the mere word love has radical powers. Rav Amnuna Sava asserts that the same 4 letters that form the name of love are the 4 letters upon which the holy name, divinity, depends. For Kabbalah mystics, all layers of reality influence each other. So when you combine the 4 letters in writing the word love, you combine the limbs of the body, you combine the spirits, the ruhot, and you combine higher spheres, sfirat, flowing into one another and intermingling into unity. In his vision, Sava describes, as complete love ascends, it encounters one supernal noble official appointed over 1,390 firmaments and appointed over the flow of 13 rivers of pure balsam flowing from the mystery of dew above. Yet even without this lush promise of the rich heavens flowing into the world at the moment of assemblage of the written letters of the word love, I can simply say, writing about love, reading about love, is a way to expand the spirit, widen it, prepare it to experience a greater order. In writing, I slowly flood myself with this wavelength of love to the point that it floods me. So when asked to talk about love and irony, I left the irony out. I refuse to believe in the duality, let alone the multiplicity of the world. I want to practice melting into the one. I even refuse my private irony. I am asked to publicly talk about love in the days of fear, violence, and war, and in days where my own love life is falling apart and I am falling apart. 23 years ago, I looked at my husband while he slept and wrote the line, "If I had money, I would hire 20 girls to envy me." Even now, in these days when I mostly cry, I would still hire 20 girls to envy me. In the world of phenomena, I may be separate from my man and from my suffering brothers and sisters that I may or may not consider enemies. But in the depth of it, we are all inseparable. We are one wavelength of what Thich Nhat Hanh calls interbeing. If I forget this unity, if I let reality convince me with its forgery, and specifically with its temptation of pain, the inducer of over-identification with the small self, I will separate from the real vastness, from my real family, and I will inevitably start a cycle of violence. I refuse. I chose to feel all the pain I could feel, mine and others, but never stop in the realm of separation. I rather seek unity, write about love, talk about love, call the name of love until all the layers melt and an undeniable truth exposes itself. A truth that says yes, a truth that says one, a truth that says us.
In 2015, McCann Worldwide conducted a love survey involving 29 countries and 30,000 people. The Philippines was found to be the most romantic country in all of Asia, with Filipinos saying "I love you" 17 times a week. Let me say that McCann clarified, and I clarify now, that this doesn't mean the lower-ranked countries are less loving, just less effusive. I actually think that if they did the survey now, the numbers would be higher across the board because of what the pandemic taught us all. But the Philippines does love love. We're the Latin Asians. And I know we'll still be on top. The US, if you look at that graph, is also up there. Now, Singapore is 75% Chinese, and in general, Chinese culture tends to favor more reticence, emotionally anyway. Singapore is also very conservative. For instance, to build stable communities, the government extends easy home ownership terms to married couples in a country where property and space is as, where property and space is as costly as it is scarce. The result? A marriage proposal can take the form of just one line that doesn't make reference to love at all. So, shall we register for a flat? In the US, current attitudes, political correctness, evolving sexual norms, to say nothing of Me Too, have all impacted the practice of love. What's more, the pandemic, the internet, and screens in general have resulted in an entire generation coming of age with more social awkwardness and anxiety than ever before, even here in a place where small talk is de rigueur. Face-to-face courtship encounters are rare after schooling, and relationships in the workplace are frowned upon. As my 25-year-old daughter says, who even meets people organically anymore? Dating apps are old news. Now there are even apps for making friends. At least, love is love is love. It's more inclusive than ever before. Still, people don't fall in love as much as they step gingerly into it, as if love is a swimming pool and no one's really sure whether it's clean or too cold. On the street, people are on screens and headphones. The things that might lead to love, chemistry, appearance, attraction to mannerisms, a smile, a voice, a manner of speech, these hardly come into play. No one's looking or listening anymore. And should a person find another attractive, they need to proceed carefully. Ensure that advances are 1, welcome, 2, appropriate, and 3, clear in their intention. Getting caught up, carried away, or losing one's head are out of the question. Instead, people create lovable profiles for themselves online to go together with curated photos. On Hinge or apps like it, boundaries, requirements, and non-negotiables are listed as people seek to be unhinged by love they think they'll recognize. The idea of sex as a mere biological act requiring neither love nor emotion makes things even more complicated. Nevertheless, I admit love looms large in my work. Once in 2008, I was asked to write a chick lit genre novel that ended up becoming my first book. Never mind that the editor had me revise the first draft completely because I had not delivered what she wanted. This is a real novel. I was so conflicted, I published it under my married name. Over 15 years of working on women's magazines like Cosmopolitan and Elle means I can write an 800-word RRYR piece, reviving the romance in your relationship piece in an hour flat. Early in 2023, I wrote an entire 10-episode season premiere podcast, Singapore's version of NYT's Modern Love. My latest book this past May is the English translation of a Tagalog novel, For B, or How Love Devastates 4 out of Every 5 of Us, by screenwriter and Philippine national artist Ricky Lee. And then there are my 2 short story collections. I cannot escape my own inclination towards love as a subject. Yet I like to think that in my fiction, I write about love in all its complexity, as it appears in this world, not only with irony, but also with cynicism and pragmatism. I write about love, recognizing my own laughable earnestness. But I also write about love's absence, its deficiencies, its pain, its weight, which is still writing about love. Weeks ago, IWP poet Wong Yi Eva from the Ukraine confessed she does not write about love, nor has she seen herself or her feelings reflected in works about love. And yet I believe that if there were a work that explored love in all its shades, with all its paradoxes, she would. Writers of literature should slaughter the fairy tale and sidestep the formula. That's what I strive to do. Render love's violence and mystery, yet in spite of these, also its joy. I write about imperfect people who love imperfectly and explore imperfect love. That is the true irony. We all write about love ultimately because it's the daily work of every life. It's the salve for the veil of tears that is human existence. While thinking about this, I remembered a song that played nonstop in Manila in 1980 when I was 12. To this day, when I hear it, I can't help but sing along, corny as it is. That helplessness keeps me writing about love. And of course, I have to play it for you, not in its entirety, but the translation is below. Now, ngayong mundo'y gulong-gulo at lahat tayo litong-lito. Pag-ibig sa kapwa-tao sa daigdig dapat ituro. Kung bawat puso ay marunong magmahal, kapayapa at kasiyahan tiyak na makakamtan. Lahat tayo pantay-pantay sa biyaya ng may kapal. Lahat tayo akbay-akbay, handang tumulong kanino man. Kung bawat tao ay marunong magmahal, kapag kulay o salita, tiyak na makiisa. And this is why I play this. Je t'aime, te amo, I love you. Watashi wa anata shashimai, iklibidi, iniibig kita, why di? Paano man sabihin, buong mundo'y turuan natin, tanging lunas ang pag-ibig. Okay, that's enough. That song, which combines I love you in I don't know how many languages. The translation of the song is right there.
German.
Spanish, German, Japanese, Chinese, French. Was written in, what, I think 1980. And I love it. I love it. And the English translation is there, I translated it. Let me end this with a poem I wrote in 1988 as an anniversary gift to my love because I had no money for a present. In 2002 in Singapore, there was a call for submissions for love poems, and I said to my husband, hey, remember that poem I wrote for you? Can I have it back? Now there's a love story with irony. And the poem is there for you to read. Thank you.
It was wonderful. Thank you all. Ida will be going around with microphones for your questions, and then Urit is going to be coming here. There we have her. And I'm going to just tell you about some upcoming events while you formulate your questions. This is the last of our panels in the Iowa City Public Library this year, but we do have one more panel discussion next week. Join our next Friday Join us next Friday, November 3rd at noon in the Merge co-working space on the Ped Mall for our annual Images of America panel, where our fall residency writers will reflect on their experiences in Iowa and the U.S. generally. Maybe United Airlines will figure into that. This is always a humorous, surprising, and poignant event, and we hope you'll come to join us if you are able. Please note that there will not be a reading at the Shamba House tonight. However, our final reading in the series will take place at 5 p.m. next Friday, November 3rd. This last reading will feature Martha Cecilia Ruiz, who is from Nicaragua, and Marina Porcelli, who is from Argentina. This Sunday, October 29th at 4 p.m., our Prairie Lights reading series will conclude with a final reading featuring Artur Domyslawski, who is from Poland, Rita Peckman, who is on our panel today, and who is from Finland, and MFA candidate in literary translation, Jack Rockwell. We hope to see you there. Afterward, that same Sunday at 7 o'clock in room 105 of the Adler Journalism Building, our Cinematheque series will screen the film PK, introduced by Saba Hamza from Yemen. The film will be followed by a brief Q&A. And now to your questions.
I'd also like to ask everyone to, particularly today, speak up into the microphone so that Orit will be sure to hear you.
Yeah.
I don't want to sound like taking up the question as a gesture of moving the discussion, but actually partly I am. My question is to Eva. You describe love as a flavor enhancer, as ketchup or mayonnaise, but are we writing about love separately? Is there anything that is called love story? Isn't it part of life, like knitted into the daily? I have a problem, a challenge understanding what a love story is, because it's still a story.
Thanks, Ali. That's a very interesting question, actually. Well, as a short stories writer, I have been writing about so many different things that I could sort of sense when I didn't add the love/chicken bouillon into the story. For example, like I said, Ways to Love in the Crowded City is my fourth short story collection, and it's the only one that has love in the middle of the title. And it's basically an entire book about stories that you would definitely find some elements of romantic love in it. And there are other short stories collections that I have written that would be horrifying if I put any romantic love in it. For example, there was this one book called Patched Up, which was basically me trying to fictionalize my experiences working in an orphanage in China. So if I put any of the chicken bouillon in the stories, it would be very scary. It's like, oh no, what is this woman doing talking about romantic love when you're working with small children? But I guess the idea of putting love into the story for it to work as an important element of the story, that would qualify it as a love story for me. For example, I mentioned a couple of the famous examples from Hong Kong literature where you really need to use the lens of romantic love for the story to stand and to be so powerful. For example, there are many, many ways you can talk about war or the Japanese invasion of Hong Kong, but if you do it through the lens of romantic love, the whole story changes, and it brings a certain level of humanity into it. And it shows you that even in times of turmoil, there's still a humanity in it. There's still hope, there's still heartbreak. People still love when there is a war going on. So I feel like that provides a very important perspective. If you took the romance out of it, if you took the love out of it, it would be a completely different story. And that's also what I was trying to get at. Like, for a good story, you can put chicken bouillon in it, but make it worthwhile, like make it work. Not just like a little garnish that says, okay, I put chicken in this, but make it so that it is indispensable. Make it so that if you take it out, it's just not the same. So that's a sort of my little response to the question. Thank you.
Other questions?
Hi, thank you. My question is for Orit. Orit, thank you for this beautiful essay. Very moving, very touching. you mentioned Thich Nhat Hanh. I wanted to ask you if you could share with us how spirituality and meditation interact with your own writing practice.
Thank you. I think the most important thing to say about meditation is that it's a point where you don't add input, but actually wait for input. You wait for something that you don't control to speak to you, to be revealed. And in this way, it is a very deep practice to listen to the voice of love and then implement it in writing. So it's one flow. And in this regard, if I have to add an answer to the former questions, I would contend that love stories are stories where the people, the protagonists, are being motivated by powers that they don't know of and that they don't decide of. And this chaotic element, this is something that is initiated outside of the self and influences the other. I think this would be the flow. And this is true also for meditation to poetry and also for love into life.
Other questions?
Hello? Oh, okay. Can you hear me? Yeah, can't really hear the mic. Okay. I guess when talking about love, what comes to my mind is mainly romantic love. But there are all other aspects such as familial or friendly, or I guess divine love. And I'm just wondering about this is for any of the panelists to answer, speak on, just thoughts on how these other aspects of love can come and appear in your stories, and also how it can inform the romantic love that can be present in stories, and how it can possibly even deepen how we could present that in our own writing.
Definitely, when I write about love, it's not limited to romantic love, and I think at least in the process of creation, what happens is when you talk about love, there are no sides to it. Whereas in a romantic love, there's, the romance side will always call upon you to go into perspective of one or the other. When love comes to bear on any human event, not to put it in a truism, but love conquers all. It becomes he is human, she is human, we are human, and we're all trying to just make it through this thing in a way that doesn't diminish our humanity, in a way that celebrates what's good amid what is not. And so that is often what's at least for my work, the driving point, because it's so easy to get bogged down by the absence of love that we forget that the people living and we're all just human beings trying to be, and that's what, not to sound corny or anything, but that's what brings us together, that's what we share. And so it kind of is there as a driving force, at least in my work, because I tend to write stories not only about romantic love, more actually about the breakup of romantic love or the destruction of it when I think about what I'm writing and the devastation of it, and then realizing that that person on the other side is just doing the best he or she or they can, and that's just the point of time at which we're looking at those characters.
Yeah. I write poems. In the poems, I try to take all the things that happen in the life, money, events, acknowledge. And I think romantic love, it's an illness that put away the important things that we need to to talk and to think, like really friendship, like our relationship with nature. That is a theme very important to me, because if we don't have a world, if we don't have a territory lovely, we don't have love. And we are doing horrible things with this space, with extractivism and with the decisions that takes people that have money and power. And for that, for me, love in poetry and love in novels, it's another thing to do, more complex than only think in a couple that fall in love. This is the thing that I do.
Yeah.
I want to thank all of you. The presentations today have just been very moving, very deep, and thoughtful, and it makes me think of the American writer Bell Hooks, and she was, you know, a lifelong advocate for love in feminism, love in social structures, love in public, in the sense that you know, that social justice is a demonstration of that. And it just seems like, you know, we use the phrase irony in this title. You know, it's, in a way, it's cynicism, and that there's just as much cynicism for that broad love, that universal love, as there is for romantic love. And I just wanted to, you've touched on it already, but just get your thoughts on how we overcome that cynicism about making that, you know, that kind of deep connection love that, you know, that's so important, you know, more part of our social structures and part of our daily living.
Orit, everyone is looking at you.
You're so big on
I think we need to... At least I have a really good excuse why I couldn't hear the question, but I think that we need to fear the right thing. Of course we fear love. We're right. I'm here at the stage where I gave everything I had to love, and now I'm left with nothing. But it's, for me, it's worse to fear the other thing. Not to give love, not to be a part of this, not to share the deepest life force that this whole game of illusions is about. So of course we need to fear, and in this sense it's irony and not cynicism. And of course we are going to lose it all anyhow. But let's make our own choices, when reality, politics, and life take all the other choices for us.
I think that that's exactly what, even while I was singing it, as much as I love it, I could feel my own cynicism flowing through and stopping the song. And if you read the meaning of the song, it becomes even more present. But my answer to that question is really what George Saunders says. What is the definition of irony? It's just honesty with the volume cranked up high. So, which means that love is wonderful and beautiful, but we have to be open to everything that's in between, all the layers of gray, all the moments between people, and be open to that. And I think that's the only way to do it, or that's the only way I can do it, either in my work and in my life, that I cannot make a judgment without considering that the person on the other side is a human being too. So.
That may be the place where we bring to a close a remarkable session of all of these presentations. Thank you so very much.
Yeah, just sign your sign. It just gives us permission to use your image.
It's a song?
Yes. Thank you.
So